Welcome to this deep dive. It's all about the messy middle.
Hmm.
That the phase of a project that we all dread.
Yeah.
We're going to be using Scott Belsky's book, The Messy Middle, as our guide.
I've-
And he, I mean, the guy's got this incredible background. He founded Behance. He's been an investor,
Right.
held leadership role over at Adobe.
Right.
I mean, so he's not just, talking theory here.
Right.
He's been in the trenches.
Yeah. What's great is Bilski doesn't try to sugarcoat it.
Right.
He acknowledges that initial excitement of a new project.
Yeah.
We've all felt that.
The honeymoon phase.
Right. But then reality sets in and you're right in the thick of it.
Okay, so we're past the honeymoon phase. What makes this messy middle so important that we're dedicating a whole deep dive to it?
Well, it's not just about surviving. It's about, taking it to the next level. Optimize. Think of it like this.
Hmm.
You hit the gym. You're trying to get stronger, right?
Okay.
You're lifting those weights. You feel the burn. That discomfort, that's actually where the growth is happening.
Right.
Same with any big project. This is where you build up that resilience as a team, as an individual.
It's so true. I think I'm starting to see why this resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
I feel that pressure to just push through, get to the finish line.
Yeah.
But Belsky, he suggests we need to short circuit our reward system.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Don't we want to celebrate those wins along the way?
I mean, the thing is, we're all wired for instant gratification, right? But in the messy middle, that can actually backfire.
Okay.
Seeking those quick dopamine hits keeps us focused on those short-term rewards, not the long-term vision.
It's funny because just yesterday I was working on a project and I caught myself getting really frustrated.
Yeah.
That it wasn't moving as quickly as I hoped. And,
Yeah.
and maybe that's that reward system kicking in.
Right.
Wanting that instant sense of progress.
That's it. And Belsky's saying by resisting that urge, by embracing the discomfort of the messy middle, that's where we open ourselves up to that deeper learning and a more sustainable growth.
Okay.
He even says that friction, disagreements, those kind of tense moments, they can actually bring teams closer.
Now that sounds completely backwards. I always thought, harmony is the ideal team environment.
I mean, think about it this way. When there's conflict, if it's handled constructively, it forces you to listen, really listen to other perspectives. You're challenging assumptions, you're digging deeper,
Right.
and ultimately you surface those better solutions.
So it's like those really intense brainstorming sessions where everyone is throwing out ideas,
Wow.
even the crazy ones.
Yeah,
And somehow a really innovative solution emerges from the chaos.
exactly.
I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it takes real skill, though, to manage that kind of creative friction. Do you have an example of how this works in practice?
Well, Belsky talks about David Marquet. He was a submarine commander.
Okay.
And he completely changed his leadership style.
Hmm.
Instead of giving direct orders, he empowered the crew
Oh, wow.
to take ownership.
Okay.
It led to some incredible results because people felt responsible, not just like cogs in a machine.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like they discovered a whole new level of commitment when they felt trusted to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So we talked about short-circuiting that reward system
Right.
and embracing friction. What else does Belsky recommend for navigating this often tricky, messy middle?
Well, he has this great phrase. He says to leave every conversation with energy.
Okay.
So
Yep.
imagine you're dealing with a tough issue. Maybe you have to deliver bad news.
Right.
It's easy to get bogged down
Yeah.
in the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you focus on injecting some positivity and momentum into the conversation,
Yeah.
even if the topic itself is challenging?
And I see what you mean. It's like shifting the focus from dwelling on the problem to brainstorming solutions,
Exactly.
even if they're difficult ones.
Yeah. And Bilski points out, it's human nature to avoid conflict,
Right.
especially when you have to let people down.
Yeah.
But by burying that conflict, we actually create this toxic environment.
Oh.
So it's much healthier to address those issues head on,
Yeah.
even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
I get that. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
It might sting for a second,
Yeah.
but then the healing can begin.
Exactly. And a big part of this is self-awareness.
Mhm.
Do you tend to shy away from those confrontations? Do you get defensive? Understanding our own tendencies in
Right.
those situations. that really helps us navigate those tricky conversations.
It's like knowing your strengths and weaknesses, both in terms of your skills
Yeah.
and your personality, your tendencies. The more self-aware you are, the better you can lead, especially when things get tough.
Right.
And speaking of tough, Belsky has some interesting advice about quitting. It sounds like he's saying we shouldn't be so quick to throw in the towel.
Absolutely. He sees quitting as a last resort.
Okay.
Before you call it quits, he suggests you try to look at the problem from a new angle. Could you reframe it?
Okay.
Maybe there's a solution you haven't considered yet.
I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes you get so stuck in one way of thinking, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
Stepping back, trying a different approach can be really powerful.
Yeah.
I think what resonates most with me so far is this idea of embracing the long game.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about what that means, like in a practical sense.
Well, it all starts with a shift in mindset.
Okay.
Instead of chasing those quick wins, you're focused on the long-term vision.
Right.
And that takes patience.
Yeah.
Building something truly meaningful takes time, and you can't get discouraged when progress feels slow.
Yeah, we live in a world of instant everything,
Yeah,
but some things just take time.
Absolutely. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly. And Belsky uses Amazon as a perfect example.
Right.
Under Bezos, they were laser focused on those long-term goals, even when it meant making decisions that maybe seemed counterintuitive at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, think about their early investments in things like Alexa.
Right. It took years to really see the return on that.
It's like having the faith to plant a seed, nurture it, knowing it'll eventually blossom, even if you don't see those results immediately.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another point Belsky makes. He actually argues that experience is overrated. That seems a bit controversial, doesn't it?
It might seem that way at first.
Yeah.
But think about how quickly the world is changing, right? What worked 5-10 years ago might not be relevant today.
Right.
So having that ability to learn, adapt, take initiative, that can often be more valuable than just relying on past experience.
I've definitely seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
I remember when we were launching a new feature on our platform, and it was actually one of our newer team members who had the most innovative ideas.
Oh, wow.
They weren't afraid to question the way things had always been done,
Right.
which led to some really creative solutions.
That's a perfect example of what Belsky's talking about.
Yeah.
You know, he tells this great story about Malcolm Jones. He was a junior hire at Behance.
Okay.
And despite having limited experience, you know, he really impressed everyone with his enthusiasm.
Yeah.
His willingness to dive in and learn.
So it's not about dismissing experience altogether.
Right.
It's recognizing that sometimes a fresh perspective, that hunger to learn, can be even more valuable.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
And to me, that ties in with Belsky's emphasis on doing work you don't have to do.
Yeah.
It's about taking initiative, going above and beyond.
He has this great quote, "Extraordinary results come from doing work you don't have to do." And it really speaks to that idea of going the extra mile, being proactive, identifying what needs to be done, and just taking action.
I can see how that attitude can really set you apart, especially in a competitive environment.
Absolutely.
It's not just about doing what's expected of you. It's about looking for ways to contribute beyond your formal role.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about enduring those lows, embracing the long game.
Yep.
What's the final phase of mastering this messy middle?
It's all about optimizing those highs.
Okay.
Taking those moments of progress, those small wins,
Right.
and turning them into sustained momentum.
Yeah.
And Belsky breaks this down into 3 key areas:
Okay.
optimizing your team, optimizing your product, and optimizing yourself.
I love how he approaches this so systematically.
Yeah.
It's not just about weathering the storm. It's about actively making things better along the way.
That's it.
Let's start with optimizing the team. What are some of Belsky's key insights here?
Well, he's adamant that a great team is more than just a collection of talented individuals.
Right.
It's about the chemistry,
Yeah.
how those individuals work together, the dynamics, the culture. You know, if the team isn't in a good place,
Yeah.
even the most brilliant ideas will struggle.
That makes total sense. I've been in situations where there was so much talent on a team,
Right.
but the dynamics were all wrong.
Yeah.
It was like trying to fit square pegs into round holes. Nothing really worked the way it should have.
And Belsky offers some really practical advice for building that high-performing team.
Okay.
One of the things that really resonated with me was his idea to refactor, then hire. It's about resisting that urge to immediately add more people when things get busy.
So instead of automatically expanding the team,
Right.
you're suggesting we look for ways to improve our existing processes and workflows.
Exactly. Belsky shares how the head of operations at Behance, encouraged the teams to look for inefficiencies,
Right.
streamline those workflows,
Yeah.
really explore alternative solutions before resorting to hiring. And that philosophy of refactor, then hire, it really stuck with me.
I can see how that would force you to be more resourceful,
Yeah.
to find creative solutions within your existing constraints.
Absolutely.
I remember when we were facing a similar situation at my last company,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of hiring more people, we actually took a step back and completely overhauled our project management system.
Wow.
It was a lot of work up front,
Yeah.
but it ultimately made us so much more efficient.
And Belsky argues that limitations can actually spark creativity.
Okay.
He gives the example Skybox, a company that built this low-cost satellite using off-the-shelf parts.
Wow.
They achieved something remarkable that many people thought was impossible.
Yeah.
Simply by embracing those constraints.
I love that. It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly.
Sometimes those limitations force us to think outside the box, come up with those truly innovative solutions.
Right.
And that resourcefulness becomes such a valuable asset for a team.
Yeah.
Speaking of valuable assets, what about the people themselves?
Right.
What does Belsky say about building a team with the right mix of skills and personalities?
Well, he reiterates that idea we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Hiring for initiative over experience.
Right.
He says that enthusiasm, that willingness to learn and contribute right away, that can often be more important than having a resume full of credentials.
I find that really encouraging, especially for people who might be earlier in their careers.
Right.
It's a reminder that you don't have to have years of experience to make a valuable contribution.
Right. Passion and a willingness to learn can go a long way. And Belsky highlights this, with that story about Malcolm Jones,
Right.
the junior hire at Behance, who really thrived despite his limited experience.
Yeah.
His enthusiasm was infectious, and he was always eager to learn.
It's about finding those hidden gems.
Yeah.
Those people who might not have a ton of experience, but who have that spark, that drive to learn and make a difference.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky is also a big believer in resilience.
He is.
He sees challenges as opportunities for growth.
He does. He emphasizes that adversity builds resilience.
Okay.
Setbacks, those moments when things go wrong, they're inevitable, and they can actually make us stronger, both individually and as a team.
It's like that Nietzsche quote, right?
Right.
That which does not kill us makes us stronger.
Exactly.
It's those moments of adversity that really test our mettle, force us to dig deep,
Yeah.
find those inner reserves of strength.
And Belsky shares this really powerful story about his sister who lived with a disability.
Wow.
And he talks about the challenges that she faced.
Yeah,
And how her resilience and determination really inspired him.
that's powerful.
It's a reminder that, we all face adversity in different forms.
Right.
And it's how we respond to those challenges
Right.
that really defines us.
That's such an important point. It's not about avoiding hardship. It's about learning how to navigate it, to find the meaning and growth in those difficult moments.
Exactly.
And it sounds like Belsky's also a big advocate for diversity within a team.
He is. He stresses the importance of having a mix of perspectives, backgrounds, experiences, and even personalities. He argues that you need some, what he calls polarizing personalities
Right.
to really push boundaries.
Yeah.
Come up with truly innovative solutions.
I can definitely see how having those different viewpoints
Yeah.
can lead to more creative brainstorming and problem solving.
Mhm.
But how do you manage those strong personalities? Isn't there a risk of things getting out of hand?
Well, Belsky uses a really interesting analogy.
Okay.
He talks about a team's immune system.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does a team's immune system work?
So just like in our bodies,
Yeah.
a team develops an immune system
Okay.
that identifies and rejects, those infections,
Hmm.
whether it's a bad hire,
Right.
a misaligned priority, or a decision that just isn't working. A strong team immune system can quickly surface those problems.
But it sounds like this immune system can also backfire.
He can. when you're trying to implement change, that same immune system can become a roadblock. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Belsky suggests that the ideal team includes both doers and dreamers.
I like that distinction.
Yeah.
Who are the doers and who are the dreamers?
So the doers are those pragmatic people.
Okay.
They're very process-oriented.
All right.
They keep things grounded, ensure progress, and often act as the team's voice of reason. The dreamers are those big-picture thinkers.
Okay.
The ones who are constantly pushing boundaries and coming up with those out-there ideas.
So it's about having both of those perspectives represented.
Yeah.
The yin and yang of a high-performing team.
Exactly.
You need those practical, grounded individuals who can execute, and you also need those visionaries who can imagine new possibilities.
And it's knowing when to empower each type.
Right.
Day-to-day operations, let the doers run the show. But when it's time to brainstorm or tackle a brand new challenge, give the dreamers the space to explore those unconventional solutions.
It's like creating an environment where both types can thrive.
Yeah.
Where their unique strengths are recognized and valued.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like Belsky also has some specific advice on integrating new talent into a team.
He talks about grafting talent.
Okay.
And he emphasizes that it takes real effort to integrate new members.
Yeah.
Especially those who are exceptionally talented.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough to just hire great people.
Right.
You have to create an environment where they can truly integrate and flourish.
I've definitely seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
Sometimes companies get so excited about hiring a rock star that they forget about the importance of onboarding and integration. And then that new hire, despite all their talent, ends up feeling lost or isolated.
And Belsky stresses the importance of empathy.
Oh, okay.
You know, put yourself in the shoes of those new hires. What are the challenges they're facing?
Right.
What support do they need to be successful?
It's about going beyond the typical onboarding process and really actively integrating that new talent into the team's culture and workflows.
Exactly.
And it sounds like he also has some interesting thoughts on keeping a team motivated and engaged over the long haul.
He does. He talks about the importance of keeping people moving, you know. Complacency can be a killer.
Yeah.
So it's crucial to disrupt that comfort zone by creating opportunities for growth and new challenges.
Okay.
Think about rotating roles, encouraging experimentation, or providing professional development opportunities.
I love that. It's about creating a culture of continuous learning and growth.
Yeah.
Where people feel challenged and supported to expand their skills and take on new responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also believes in the power of storytelling.
He does.
I'm a sucker for a good story, so I'm curious to hear more about this.
Well, he talks about how stories, especially those from the early days of a project or company, they can help build this shared narrative.
Okay.
You know, they reinforce values.
Yeah.
Create a sense of community, and remind people why they're all on this journey together.
I can see how sharing those stories would create a stronger sense of action within a team.
Absolutely.
It's like those campfire stories, you know, that bind us to a shared past and create a sense of belonging. Do you have an example of how a company has effectively used storytelling to build its culture?
Well, Belsky talks about how Behance use storytelling to reinforce their unique culture. They'd share anecdotes from those early days, those little moments, even seemingly insignificant ones. That really became part of their shared history.
So it's about capturing those moments and sharing them, not just the big wins, but those small, everyday interactions that shape a team's identity and values.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And speaking of powerful personalities, Belsky talks about something he calls free radicals. Now, I'm picturing someone with a lab coat and bubbling beakers.
Right.
What does he mean by that?
Think of those unbound, independent thinkers.
Okay.
You know, those who push boundaries, challenge the status quo. They might operate outside of traditional hierarchies.
Right.
And they can be disruptive. But they're also often a source of real innovation.
So they're the rule breakers, the ones who aren't afraid to shake things up.
Yeah, and they can bring a really fresh perspective to a team.
I can definitely see that. Do you have an example of a free radical who really made a difference?
Well, Belsky talks about Steve Jobs.
Right.
I mean, we all know he could be incredibly demanding.
Yeah.
But he also recognized the value of those free radicals within Apple.
Mm.
He saw their potential
Right.
and empowered them to contribute in their unique ways.
It's about recognizing that those unconventional thinkers,
Yeah.
those who don't always fit neatly into the existing structure, can actually be huge assets to a team.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky's also a big believer in the importance of the physical environment.
He tells this great story about Steve Jobs' obsession with the design of Pixar's offices. Jobs really believed that the workspace could impact interactions, creativity, and ultimately the quality of the work.
So it's not just about having a functional space. It's about creating an environment that inspires and facilitates those creative interactions.
Exactly.
And it sounds like he also has some thoughts on the tools that teams use.
He talks about how the tools we use can either enhance or hinder creativity and productivity. It's about choosing technology that empowers people to do their best work, not bureaucratic systems that bog them down in unnecessary processes.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah,
where technology supports creativity rather than stifling it.
absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also has some really insightful advice on aligning people's skills and passions with the work they're doing.
He does. He really stresses the importance of aligning work with passion and skill. He argues that people are most engaged and productive when they're working on things that they're naturally good at,
Right.
and that they genuinely enjoy.
It's about recognizing those individual strengths and finding ways to match people with tasks that align with their interests and abilities.
Right, not just assigning work based on hierarchy or who happens to be available.
And Belsky says that if you find yourself needing to create a lot of rigid processes, it might be a sign that there are underlying issues with communication or alignment.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
When everyone is on the same page and empowered to contribute their unique skills,
Yeah.
the need for all those rules and regulations diminishes.
That's a really interesting point. It's about trusting people to do their best work and creating an environment where they feel empowered to contribute their unique talents.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also has some innovative ideas about keeping teams motivated and informed.
He has this great concept he calls merchandising internally.
Okay, tell me more about this. How do you merchandise to your own team?
It's about actively promoting the team's progress, sharing wins, and keeping everyone engaged and motivated. Just like you'd market your product to external customers.
Okay.
You need to sell the vision, the progress, and the value of the work to your internal team.
I see what you mean.
Especially when you're slogging through that messy middle.
Yeah.
And it feels like the finish line is miles away.
It's about making sure everyone feels seen and appreciated for their contributions and that they understand how their work fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Belsky is also a big advocate for visual communication.
He is. He says mock-ups beat words.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that visuals can often convey ideas.
Right.
And eliminate ambiguity much more effectively than lengthy explanations.
Like that saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Exactly.
Sometimes a simple visual can cut through all the noise and make things crystal clear.
Absolutely. And this can apply to so many different scenarios.
Yeah.
From sharing ideas with your colleagues to pitching a concept to investors. A well-crafted mock-up can often convey the essence of a product or an idea more effectively than a detailed presentation.
It's about finding the most effective way to communicate. And sometimes that means thinking visually rather than just relying on words.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about merchandising internally and the power of visuals.
Yeah.
What else does Belsky recommend for keeping a team running smoothly during the messy middle?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of delegating effectively. As a project scales.
Yeah.
You can't do everything yourself.
Right.
And you need to empower others to take ownership. But there's an art to doing this well.
I agree. I've been on both sides of that equation, and I can say from experience that delegating effectively is a real skill.
It is.
What are some of the key elements of effective delegation?
Well, Belsky highlights the importance of clear communication, trust, and feedback loops.
Okay.
He brings back that example of David Marquet,
the
submarine commander who found that empowering his crew to take ownership
Yeah.
led to those incredible results.
So it's about creating a culture of trust and responsibility where people feel confident making decisions
Right.
and taking action without needing constant direction.
Exactly. And it's also about choosing the right communication channel.
Okay.
You know, he talks about being mindful of the goal of the conversation and selecting the appropriate method.
Right.
Whether it's a face-to-face meeting,
Yeah.
a quick email, or a detailed document.
So it's about being deliberate with your communication, choosing the medium that's most effective for the message you're trying to convey.
And he has this great phrase, embracing explicitness. It's about being clear and direct in your communication,
Okay.
leaving no room for ambiguity or misinterpretation.
It's about saying what you mean and meaning what you say.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
It can be so frustrating when communication is vague or unclear.
Right.
It often leads to misunderstandings and wasted time.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also recognizes the role of competition in driving innovation.
He does. He argues that competition, both internal and external, can really push us to be our best. You know, it's about channeling that competitive energy in a healthy way.
Right.
Using it to push boundaries and strive for excellence.
Yeah.
Without letting it devolve into cutthroat rivalry.
I think that's such an important distinction.
Yeah.
Healthy competition can bring out the best in people, but it's important to create an environment where everyone feels supported.
Absolutely.
And encouraged to grow even as they're striving to excel.
Right.
Do you have any examples of how competition has spurred innovation?
Well, Belsky shares this great anecdote about Noah Kalina.
Okay.
He was a photographer. And he was inspired to create his famous everyday video project. After learning that another photographer was working on a similar concept.
Wow.
And that sense of competition.
Yeah.
It really motivated him to take action, which led to something truly remarkable.
It's amazing how sometimes a little bit of competition can be the push we need to get out of our comfort zones.
Absolutely.
And achieve something extraordinary. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Belsky also talks about the importance of conviction over consensus.
He does. He encourages leaders to trust their gut, to make those bold decisions, even when they're facing resistance.
Yeah.
It's about having the courage to stand by your convictions.
Right.
Even when it means going against the grain or challenging conventional wisdom.
I can imagine that takes a lot of courage.
It does.
Especially when you're surrounded by people who might disagree with you.
Yeah.
But it's about having that inner compass, that belief in your vision, even when it's not the popular opinion.
And Belsky reminds us that truly innovative ideas, they often face pushback initially. He gives the example of the Louvre pyramid.
Oh, wow.
Which was initially met with widespread criticism.
Yeah.
But is now considered an iconic landmark.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most groundbreaking ideas are the ones that challenge the status quo and disrupt our expectations.
Right.
And those ideas often take time to gain acceptance.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of ground on optimizing teams.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited to dive into Belsky's insights on optimizing our products.
That's a great segue. One of the things Belsky emphasizes is that the best products solve very specific problems exceptionally well.
It's like finding that niche, that sweet spot where your product really excels.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be all things to all people.
Right.
It makes sense. But I can also see how that could be a tough pill to swallow, especially for entrepreneurs who are so passionate about their ideas.
Right.
And they want to see them reach as many people as possible.
And Belsky acknowledges that.
Yeah.
You know, it can be hard to let go of certain features or ideas that we're really attached to. He actually encourages us to kill our darlings.
Yeah.
It's about being ruthless, being willing to sacrifice those things that aren't truly essential to the core value of the product.
You know, it's funny because I was just reading an article about a successful startup founder, and he said one of the hardest things he had to do was to cut a feature that he absolutely loved.
Wow.
But that wasn't resonating with users.
Yeah.
It was like saying goodbye to a part of his baby.
Right.
But he knew it was the right decision for the long-term health of the product.
And Belsky shares a similar story about Tim Ferriss.
Okay.
Author and entrepreneur.
Right.
You know, Ferriss is known for for actively seeking feedback from his community and
Yeah.
using that input to ruthlessly refine his work.
That's interesting.
It's about recognizing that sometimes an outside perspective can help us see things more clearly
Right.
and make those tough decisions.
Having that outside perspective can be so valuable.
Yeah.
Especially when you're deep in the trenches
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little too close to the project.
Right.
It's like needing a fresh pair of eyes
Yeah.
to spot those areas where you can simplify or refine.
Absolutely.
And speaking of simplification, Belsky seems to be a big advocate for that.
Mhm.
He even has this rule: make one subtraction for every addition.
Mm.
What's the thinking behind that?
It's about recognizing that as a product evolves,
Mm-hmm.
it's tempting to just keep adding new features.
Right.
But that often leads to bloat and complexity. Sometimes taking something away can actually make a product stronger.
Okay.
It's about being really intentional with every addition and making sure that it truly enhances that core value proposition.
It's like decluttering your home, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes getting rid of stuff you don't really need
Right.
can make your space feel more open and inviting.
Absolutely.
And I imagine it's the same with a product.
It is.
Too many features can be overwhelming and distracting for users.
And Belsky encourages a lot of honesty and self-awareness
Okay.
when evaluating a product. He says, if you don't think it's awesome, stop making it.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
It's about being brutally honest with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
even when it's hard to admit that something isn't working.
Right.
But it's also about having the courage to walk away from something
Yeah.
that isn't truly great, even if we've invested a lot of time and energy into it.
It can be a tough decision.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about recognizing
Right.
that our time and energy are precious.
Mm-hmm.
And we should focus on building things that we truly believe in. And that will make a positive impact.
I love that. It's about being discerning
Yeah.
and having that commitment to excellence.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky is also a big proponent of prioritizing user experience over chasing the latest trends.
He cautions against pursuing novelty at the expense of usability.
Right.
You know, while it can be tempting to chase those shiny new trends,
Yeah.
the best products prioritize familiarity
Okay.
and make that user experience as intuitive as possible.
It's about remembering that the user is at the heart of everything. You can have the most cutting edge technology,
Right.
but if it's not user friendly,
Yeah.
it's not going to be successful.
He also cautions against overanalyzing and overthinking.
Okay.
He says, too much scrutiny creates flaws. It's a reminder that sometimes our pursuit of perfection
Yeah.
can actually lead to unnecessary complexity
Right.
and detract from the core value of the product.
It's like that saying, perfect is the enemy of good. Exactly.
Sometimes you just need to get something out there.
Yeah.
And let it evolve based on user feedback.
And Belsky makes this really intriguing point about effective design.
Okay.
He says effective design is invisible.
Okay, I'm curious. What does he mean by that?
Right.
How can design be invisible?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
The best designed products,
Yeah.
they integrate so seamlessly into the user's life
Mm-hmm.
that they almost disappear.
Right.
They just work.
Mhm.
The user doesn't have to think about the design. They can just focus on the task at hand.
I see what you mean. It's like a well-designed door handle.
Yeah.
You don't think about the design.
Right.
You just intuitively know how to use it.
Exactly. It just works.
And Belsky emphasizes that initial user experience,
Mm-hmm.
what he calls the first mile, is critical.
Yeah.
It's about making that first interaction as smooth and engaging as possible, grabbing the user's attention right from the start.
It's like that saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
That's it.
That first interaction can really make or break a user's experience.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of how a company has really nailed that first mile?
Well, he talks about how Behance completely overhauled their sign-up process.
Okay.
You know, simplifying the steps, removing all those unnecessary barriers.
Mm-hmm.
It was a seemingly small change,
Yeah.
but it had a huge impact on user growth.
It's about sweating the details.
Yeah.
Especially those early interactions
Okay.
that can shape the user's overall perception of the product.
And it sounds like Belsky also has some interesting insights into human psychology.
Okay.
He even suggests that we should optimize for laziness, vanity, and selfishness.
That sounds a bit cynical, doesn't it?
It might sound that way at first.
Yeah.
But it's really about understanding those basic human tendencies and using them to our advantage.
You're right.
You know, it's not about exploiting people. It's
Right.
about designing products that cater to those innate desires in a positive way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example. How do you design for laziness?
So optimizing for laziness is all about making things easy and intuitive.
Okay.
It's about removing friction, streamlining those workflows,
Yeah.
and anticipating the user's needs.
So it's about making the experience as effortless as possible.
Right.
So the user doesn't have to jump through hoops to get what they need.
Exactly.
What about designing for vanity?
So optimizing for vanity is about giving users a sense of accomplishment or recognition.
Okay.
You know, it could be through visual feedback, social sharing features,
Right.
or personalized experiences. You know, we all have that desire to be seen and acknowledged.
Right.
And a well-designed product can tap into that
Yeah.
in a positive way.
It's like those fitness apps that track your progress and award you badges for hitting milestones. It's a way to motivate and encourage users.
Really?
And what about designing for selfishness?
Okay.
How does that work?
So optimizing for selfishness is about delivering immediate value.
Okay.
It's about clearly demonstrating how the product benefits the user directly.
So it's about making that value proposition front and center.
Yeah.
Showing users how the product will make their lives easier, better, more enjoyable.
Exactly. And Belsky emphasizes that the product should ultimately speak for itself.
Right.
He says, do show explain.
Mm.
It's about prioritizing action and demonstration
Yeah.
over lengthy explanations.
Like that saying, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
Let the product do the talking.
He gives the example of Photoshop.
Okay.
It's an incredibly powerful tool.
Right.
But it can also be really overwhelming
Yeah.
for new users. So instead of bombarding them with tutorials and explanations,
Right.
Belsky suggests that the product itself should be designed to guide them intuitively. Let them learn by doing.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about making the experience self-explanatory,
Right.
allowing users to discover the product's capabilities through interaction rather than through a bunch of instructions.
Yeah, and it sounds like Belsky also recognizes that truly groundbreaking innovations often start as seemingly impractical ideas.
Right.
He says that novelty doesn't always equate to immediate utility.
Okay.
He uses the example of virtual conference rooms at Goldman Sachs. Initially, no one used them.
Wow.
But over time, as technology evolved,
Yeah.
people became more comfortable with virtual interactions.
Right.
Those rooms became a valuable tool for communication and collaboration.
So it's about having the patience to let new ideas evolve and find their footing. Sometimes an idea that seems far-fetched today could become indispensable tomorrow.
Absolutely.
What else does Belsky have to say about fostering innovation within product development?
He encourages us to challenge those core assumptions.
Okay.
To break free from incremental thinking and really question the way things have always been done.
It's about being willing to disrupt.
Yeah.
Even our own successful products, if it means better serving our users and achieving our goals.
He talks about Meetup,
Okay.
which went through a radical transformation. They completely reimagined their product and business model
Wow.
to better align with their core mission.
Okay.
It was a risky move,
Yeah.
but it ultimately allowed them to stay relevant
Right.
and continue serving their community.
That takes a lot of courage to
Yeah.
be willing to walk away from something that's working.
Right.
To step into the unknown and reinvent yourself. And it sounds like Belsky also believes in empowering the entire team
Yeah.
to contribute to the innovation process.
He talks about fostering inbred innovation.
Right.
It's about encouraging every member of the team to experiment, to make those small improvements, and to contribute to the ongoing evolution of the product.
I love that. It's about recognizing that innovation doesn't always come from the top down.
Right.
It often bubbles up organically from those who are closest to the work.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in terms of optimizing teams and products. Now I'm really intrigued to hear what Belsky has to say about optimizing ourselves.
This is where Belsky really emphasizes self-awareness
Okay.
and continuous growth.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that personal development is just as important as the projects we're working on.
It's like that saying, sharpen the saw, right?
Yeah.
We need to invest in ourselves so that we can show up as our best selves in our work and in our lives.
And he encourages us to regularly reevaluate
Okay.
the metrics we're using to measure success. He says, don't blindly optimize. Keep auditing your measures.
Okay.
It's about making sure that those metrics are truly aligned with our goals.
Right.
And aren't leading us down a path of meaningless optimization.
It's so easy to get caught up in chasing numbers.
It is.
But if you're not careful,
Yeah.
we can end up focusing on the wrong things.
Right.
Do you have an example of how someone has effectively aligned their metrics with their goals?
Well, Belsky tells the story of Julio Vasconcelos,
Okay.
the CEO of Prefer, and he decided to focus on one key metric, working pairs,
Okay.
to measure the success of their platform.
Right.
And by homing in on that one crucial indicator, they were able to make much more strategic decisions.
It's about identifying those key performance indicators that really matter and not getting distracted by all the noise. And it sounds like Belsky is also wary of blindly trusting data without understanding its context.
He says, data is only as good as its source. We need to be critical thinkers, question assumptions, look beyond the numbers to understand the story they're telling.
I remember reading about a study that showed a spike in searches for "my eyes hurt" after the solar eclipse.
Oh, wow.
And people were worried that looking at the eclipse had damaged their vision.
Right.
But it turned out that the spike in searches was simply because more people were talking about eye health in general, not because there was actually a widespread problem.
Right.
It's a perfect example of how data can be misleading if you don't dig deeper and understand the context.
Absolutely. And that's why Belsky also encourages us to stress test our opinion by seeking honest feedback and challenging our own assumptions. It's about being open to different perspectives, even those that make us uncomfortable.
It's about having that humility to admit that we don't have all the answers and to be willing to learn from others, even those who might disagree with us.
He talks about the importance of radical truthfulness. And he uses Bridgewater Associates, the hedge fund, known for its culture of transparency and constructive criticism, as an example.
So it's about creating an environment where people feel safe to speak their minds.
Exactly.
Even if it means challenging the status quo or expressing an unpopular opinion.
And Belsky also reminds us that with naivete comes openness.
Okay.
It's about embracing those fresh perspectives and questioning the norms, recognizing that sometimes those who aren't bound by conventional wisdom are the ones who come up with the most innovative solutions.
It's like that beginner's mind we talked about earlier. That willingness to see things with fresh eyes and question the way things have always been done.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also believes in finding that balance between scalability and personalization.
He says the science of business is scaling, the art is the things that don't. It's about recognizing that while technology and automation can help us scale our efforts, there's also a need for human connection.
Right.
And those personalized touches that make a real difference.
I can see how that applies to so many different areas of business.
It does.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you can leverage technology to streamline processes and reach a wider audience without losing that human element that makes your product or service feel special.
Absolutely.
Do you have any examples of how companies have successfully achieved that balance?
Well, he talks about Airbnb, which in its early days invested in professional photography for its listings.
Wow.
Even though it wasn't a scalable solution.
Interesting.
That decision really helped set a high bar for quality. And differentiate them from their competitors. It is about recognizing that sometimes those small, unscalable touches can have a huge impact on the user experience.
So it's about being willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
Even if it means doing things that don't necessarily scale easily.
Right.
Sometimes those small personal touches are what make a product or service truly stand out.
And it sounds like Belsky also has some sobering advice about self-awareness. He says, your true blind spot is how you appear to others. It's a reminder that we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
And the way we perceive ourselves isn't always aligned with how others see us.
Ouch. That's a tough one to swallow.
It is.
But it's so important. We can be so caught up in our own heads that we don't realize how our actions or behaviors are impacting those around us.
Right.
How do we address those blind spots?
It all comes down to seeking feedback.
Right.
We have to be open to hearing how our actions are impacting those around us.
Yeah.
Even if it's not what we want to hear. It's about having the humility to admit that we don't have it all figured out.
Right.
And to be willing to learn and grow.
It's about embracing that continuous feedback loop.
Yeah.
And using it to become more self-aware.
Right.
And ultimately better leaders, colleagues, and human beings.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also has some insightful advice on managing our commitments.
He says, what you agree to do right.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that those passive commitments,
Yeah.
the things we half-heartedly agree to,
Right.
they can really drain our energy
Yeah.
and distract us from what's truly important.
It's about being intentional with our time and energy and saying no to those commitments
Right.
that don't truly align with our values or our goals.
And he also talks about the importance of building a network that amplifies signal. It's about surrounding ourselves
Yeah.
with competent, insightful individuals
Right.
who can provide valuable guidance and support.
So it's about recognizing that we don't have to do it all alone.
Yeah,
Having the right people in our corner
Right.
can make all the difference.
absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky also believes in aligning our actions with our values.
He has a great quote, how you spend your time reviews your values. It's about recognizing that our calendars are a reflection of our priorities.
Right. Yeah.
And if our actions don't align with our stated values,
Yeah.
there's a disconnect that needs to be addressed.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
If we say that family is our top priority,
Yeah.
but we're constantly working late and missing those important moments, our actions are speaking louder than our words.
And Belsky encourages us to build some flexibility into our schedules.
Okay.
To leave some margin for discovery.
Mm.
He says, leave some margin to mind the circumstantial.
Interesting.
It's about recognizing that unexpected opportunities often arise.
Right.
And if our schedules are jam-packed,
Yeah.
we might miss out on those serendipitous moments.
I love that. It's about embracing spontaneity, being open to new possibilities,
Right.
and recognizing that sometimes the most valuable experiences are the ones we don't plan for.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Belsky is also a big advocate for disconnecting and creating space for deep thinking and reflection.
He says, when you fail to disconnect, your imagination pays the price. In today's hyper-connected world, it's so easy to get caught up in that constant stream of information and stimulation.
Yeah.
But we need to create space for downtime,
Right.
for reflection, for those moments of quiet contemplation where our imaginations can really run wild.
So it's about giving our minds a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
And to wander. And I imagine that's when some of our most creative ideas emerge.
And he also offers this really humbling reminder about the importance of sharing credit. He says, the more credit you need, the less influence you'll have.
That's interesting.
It's about recognizing that success is rarely a solo endeavor.
Right.
And that acknowledging the contributions of others is essential for building trust and fostering a collaborative environment.
I love that. It's about having the humility to recognize that we don't achieve anything great on our own. It's always a team effort.
And finally, Belsky encourages us to give our teams the space to experiment and develop their own approaches.
Okay.
He says, remove yourself to allow others' ideas to take hold. It's about trusting our teams, empowering them to take ownership,
Right.
and recognizing that sometimes the best way to lead
Yeah.
is to step back and create space for others to shine.
I'm really struck by how much emphasis Belsky places on empowering others.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that leadership isn't about control.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to contribute their unique talent.
Absolutely. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From those early messy stages of a project all the way to the finish line and beyond.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
What really stands out to you from all of Belsky's insights?
You know, what's fascinating to me is how Belsky reframes the messy middle.
Yeah.
It's not something to be feared or avoided. It's actually a crucible where growth and transformation happen. It's in those moments of uncertainty, friction, and setbacks that we discover our true potential, both individually and as teams.
I agree.
It's where resilience is built, innovation is sparked, and truly exceptional outcomes are forged.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful way to look at it. The messy middle isn't a detour. It's an essential part of the journey.
It is.
And it sounds like Belsky has given us a lot of tools and strategies to not just survive, but to thrive in that messy middle.
Absolutely.
Well, as you navigate your own messy middle, I'd encourage you to ask yourself, what aspect of your current project feels the messiest? And how can you reframe that challenge as an opportunity for learning and growth?
That's a great question to ponder.
We've learned so much from Scott Belsky's insights today.
We have.
If you're interested in exploring these ideas further, I highly recommend checking out his book, The Messy Middle.
It's a great read.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep embracing the mess.